Welcome back to another episode of Massholes with Mikes. This is our Week 4 recap episode, and boy, do we have a recap for you. Tom Brady coming into Gillette for the first time as a visitor and leaves with a 19-17 win over the Patriots in a soaked Gillette Stadium. Very rainy night yesterday in Foxborough. With me to react, we have Jordan and Kyle. Jacqueline, unfortunately, could not be here tonight. She will be back most likely for the picks episode that should be coming out later in the week. But we have to start with the game, of course, that everyone was talking about leading up. You had the build-up, you had the hype surrounding this game. It delivered on viewers, and I think it delivered on the hype. It was a very entertaining game. Not high scoring, but it was close throughout the game, back and forth, and I was very entertained throughout. So, the Patriots did lose, obviously, 19-17. Nick Folk's 56 game go-ahead field goal attempt clanging off the left upright in a doink.
Doink.
Yeah, not quite the level of the Bears doink, but a doink nonetheless. We kind of skipped 3 up and 3 down last week when Kyle was not here in favor of just talking about all downs. But it is back this week. We are going to do 3 up and 3 down. Let's start with the negatives first, and then we'll get into the positives. Normally we don't do that, but I think there were a lot of positives to take from this game, so we're going to start with the bad stuff first. Kyle, would you like to start with your first down?
Yeah, I'm going to pick one just because I have 2 ones that are just kind of very generic, and I think you guys will talk about them, so I'm gonna pick a different one. My first down is Kyle Van Noy. I think Kyle Van Noy had a very subpar performance. The only couple times he was ever really mentioned in the broadcast, he was getting absolutely cooked on that one play, I think by Cameron Brate. I don't remember who it was. It wasn't. Oh no, it was. I think it was Leonard Fournette.
It was Fournette.
Absolutely cooked. It was a really important third down. He got absolutely burned, and they were kind of bullying him on the broadcast. They're like, once Brady saw Kyle Van Noy in coverage, he knew where he was throwing. I'm like, damn, all right, he's not that bad, but I guess he didn't have that good of a night. And then the other thing that really stuck out to me was, I think it was a second down, and they had a really good chance of getting a sack, and he literally just fell flat on his face and just did nothing. And it was one of those, like, you're a veteran guy who I would expect to be able to bring more to the table in a big game like that, and he was borderline invisible.
It was in the red zone, too, that sack play happened. I believe they had to settle for a field goal on that drive, but they got lucky only because the coverage held up. Jordan, your first down.
One of Kyle Van Noy's buddies in that linebacking court, Dante Hightower, I thought was also relatively invisible in the game. The only time I remember seeing him actually try and factor into a play was on a third down. I think it was on the first drive, actually. Leonard Fournette on a 3rd and short. Gave it to him up the middle. Hightower had a clear lane to him where in the past maybe he gets bumped, but he doesn't get completely removed from the play. But Alex Kappa got him in the ribs, and he just basically, it was like driving straight into a brick wall. He just stopped, and then the play went for 20 yards on 3rd and 2 right out of the gate. And I think he just looks super slow. He doesn't look as strong as he once did, and it's really sad to watch, honestly. I mean, maybe you guys thought he was better than I did last night, but I didn't really see him much at all.
No, I didn't see him a lot either. I know, so for context's sake, Jacqueline, Kyle, and myself were all watching the game together last night. Jordan, unfortunately, couldn't get his cross-country flight sorted out in time. Jeez, Jordan, what are you doing?
That's all right. We were interacting on Twitter enough to make up for it.
It's a good point. These two over here were absolutely on fire on Twitter last night. But we were saying it at the time. We were both, I think Jacqueline had brought it up at one point. She goes, where the heck is Van Noy? I haven't seen him the entire game. And I hadn't seen Hightower. And I think the only other time that I noticed him on the field was he came up kind of lame off of I think it was a running play to the right side. And it looked like he was hurt. So I was wondering if they were going to have to come out for him. I think it was early in the second half, maybe even that first drive. Because Kyle pointed out, too. He goes, oh, Hightower's hurt. I'm like, oh, he does exist. He's on the field. In terms of
he's about to get off.
Yeah, exactly. We thought. In terms of my number one down, I'm just going to say the running back position in general. I know me and Jordan talked about this. Jordan will have something to say about that later on. But I want to focus on the position as a whole and not single out one specific guy. Ball security is a problem with these running backs. That was not something I was expecting to have to say earlier in the year. Heading into it, I said that, okay, there isn't one guy who can do everything. Like Damian Harris still needs work in the pass game. James White, we know, is more of the pass-catching guy as opposed to running the football. But I thought as a collective core, they would be better than what they've shown so far this year. I mean, what was the number? 8 attempts for -1 rushing yards total?
I took out Max kneel down, so it was 7 for 0.
Okay. So, I mean, That speaks for
Damien Harris
itself.
had 4 carries for negative 4 yards.
We will get to quarterback play later, but if you wanted to set up your rookie quarterback for success, running 7 times for 0 yards is not the way to do it. And yeah, I understand the Buccaneers have a great defensive front. They have 2 big meat stuffers in the middle in Ndamukong Suh and Vita Vea. But, I mean, I honestly, I don't know what the Josh McDaniels could have done better with the running game. I just know that turning the ball over inside your own 30, J.J. Taylor, that was what lost this game, if you want to point to a specific play. Because you can debate coaching all you want, but those were ready-made points that the Patriots had on them. Kyle pointed it out after the game ended. Would have put them up 4, I believe, at that point. 10-6, if I'm not mistaken, because this was the first drive of the second half for the Patriots. Then the Bucs may have to start taking some shots down the field a little bit more. And outside of those 2 throws to Godwin at the end of the half when they were playing prevent defense, they weren't doing all that effectively. So guess what? I mean, you want to look at a play that may have changed the course of the game, it was that. Especially because as a fan, you could really feel the momentum building. You could feel the team getting stronger and more cohesive. And that fumble just set it back just so much. Kyle, your second.
It also hurts because even if you're not getting a touchdown there, you're well within Folk's field goal range.
Exactly.
He would have at least kicked something there.
Yep, agreed. Do you have another down, Kyle?
Yeah, I mean, I had the run game in general as a down, and then I have kind of obviously the obvious one here, but the offensive line. I mean, I don't really know what they can do at this point to fix it. It is, and I was joking about it we're watching Monday Night Football. I was joking about it. I was like, wow, the 2 football teams I have, I follow 2 football teams, one in the NFL and one in college, and neither of them have any good offensive linemen on their entire roster.
Which is weird because offensive line has been so good for them over the years. Both of them.
Both of those teams, Oklahoma and the Patriots, always have very good lines. I mean, I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that Trent Brown's not playing, and they really need to get him back. But
I think he would have if it weren't raining last night. I think he would have.
And Isaiah Wynn did play, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he played. But
didn't look good.
It's I don't like I can't even put into
I
can't even put into words just how bad they are. Like it's watching it, I'm just like what? Mac Jones is gonna get killed one of these games. We're gonna know with Brian Hoyer for 5 weeks.
He did really. He took some shots in this game. I mean, the one that he got lit up on that caused the interception. Oh,
yeah, and I do think that he does have an issue of holding on to the ball too long, but it's very much exacerbated by the fact he does not have any time to hold on to the ball anymore. Because there are a lot of times I'm like, dude, just throw it away. Like, obviously he's holding on to it because he doesn't have anyone to throw to, and I don't want to make a dumb throw, but just like, dude, it's so much easier just to take an incompletion than a sack.
I think we may have also gotten a little bit spoiled by especially Brady in his last couple of years, specifically his last year. He was throwing the ball away almost every other throw. Rodgers does that now because he doesn't want to take a sack or an interception. But there is something to be said for knowing when to play for another down. And
knowing when to fold.
That is definitely...
when to walk away.
That is
when to run.
Nice. That is definitely one of those rookie growing pains that you're going to have to deal with as a Patriots fan as Mac Jones continues to learn the position. Jordan, do you have any notes on the offensive line before I just talk about it real quick?
Well, I did think that in the second half especially, the offensive line looked a little bit better towards the end of the game. I thought like the back, I think I would say the first 35, 40 minutes of the game, they weren't great, but the last 20 to 25, they were pretty good, which is funny because Michael and Onwenu didn't play because they benched him because of the 2 penalties.
I was going to bring that up
in the
as
first
well.
Half,
yeah.
Which I thought was interesting, and I think that's something that Onwenu will be better because of having that experience, because last year he was great. He was my pick to win Offensive Rookie of the Year last year because, I'm biased as hell. This year,
there was a significant Twitter campaign for that. I remember seeing it.
There was. Won that? And then this year...
Herbert? I think it was Herbert.
Probably Herbert. It was probably Herbert.
Yeah.
This year, going into the game, best offensive lineman by Pro Football Focus grade in terms of pass blocking. So I think he'll be fine because of it. He doesn't seem like the kind of guy that'll let that rattle him, but I thought the offensive line actually played pretty well in the second half, and with Ted Karras at left guard of all people. So it's almost like maybe you can kick Onwenu out to right tackle and put Ted Karras at left guard, and your offensive line won't be Swiss cheese until Trent Brown comes back, and then you can.
Ted Karras also had some pretty ugly plays in that game, though, especially on that touchdown drive when they eventually hit Henry. Or no, it wasn't. No, that wasn't the touchdown. That was their last field goal they scored. He had some pretty ugly plays.
Yeah, it didn't end well for him, but I don't think he's played that much in consecutive.
No, that's fair.
In maybe 2 years.
Jordan took the words right out of my mouth. I was very excited because I was watching the game, obviously, with Kyle, and I had said it at the time. I go, oh, Ted Karras is in at left guard. Does that mean Onwenu's at right tackle? And I look, and Yasir Durant is sitting out there, and I'm going, what? What do we? Please be the 6th offensive lineman. I do a quick count on the line. I go, nope, that is not the 6th offensive lineman there. They're not in the heavy package. I hope that Onwenu bounces back. Maybe, as Jordan said, Karras was serviceable enough. Him at left guard was not as big a negative as Durant and Haran at right tackle, if that makes any sense. So you can, I guess, use that and say, all right, maybe if you have to deal with a suffering on the offensive line, keep it on the interior, kick Onwenu out to right tackle and see what works. Or maybe Trent Brown can just come back this next week and we'll be all God's sunshine and rainbows. We can.
I think regardless, the Pats will be taking a lineman in the first round this year.
They should.
Probably.
A big fatty on the interior.
Definitely in the top 2 rounds.
Maybe that's why they were looking at Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC and were reportedly going to draft him until the Jets took him. The pick before Mac Jones. Jordan,
Possible.
do you have any other downs you want to share before we move on to the ups?
Mine's slightly nitpicky, and it goes back to my opinion of him in training camp when the roster crunch came down. What is Gunnar Olszewski still doing on the Patriots? I know he was an all-pro returner last year, but if that's all you can do.
And he doesn't even return kickoffs.
Exactly. That's my second note on this.
They have
That's my
Bolden and Taylor doing it.
my two notes under Gunnar. He's a lucky SOB that ball hit the pylon because he shouldn't have even tried to catch
Agreed.
it. And two, still don't know what the point of him being on the roster is if Bolden's going to be the one returning kickoffs.
All right.
Bolden's been fine. I'm okay with it.
Well, yeah, Bolden's been fine.
There's nothing that I can say that would disagree with what you said. I don't understand why he's still taking up a roster spot, especially because you did activate Jordan's guy, N'Keal Harry, off of IR, another wide receiver to the depth chart. What is Gunnar still sitting there?
And what you can do is if you want to have extra receivers, is you could cut Gunnar because you're clearly okay with J.J. Taylor and Brandon Bolden returning kicks and elevate Christian Wilkerson from the practice squad because he looked really good in the preseason. Even
Definitely
though he wasn't much of a yak guy, but very good possession receiver in the preseason.
Yeah, exactly. My last down that I briefly want to touch on, the broadcast, specifically Chris Collinsworth.
He had a rough night.
Calling Dietrich Wise the best overall defensive player on the defense, on the Patriots defense. What are you doing? He was slobbering.
He did have a good game.
He was slobbering all over Chris Collinsworth, all over Steve Belichick. That would have been weird. Chris Collinsworth slobbering on himself. Slobbering all over Steve Belichick when, let's be honest, did anyone think that Steve Belichick came up with that game plan? Does he have 2 brain cells to rub together to come up with that? No, it was his
Mayo.
dad.
It was
Daddy
his dad. Did and Gerard Mayo.
And you know what? Credit to both of them because they did a good job. They did a very good job. But why are we giving Steve Belichick all the credit just so he can go start licking putting his tongue up his nostril? It was disgusting on the sidelines. The NBC camera was just focused in on that the entire time. And then
I can't believe
the commercial breaks also annoyed me. So why did we not get to see the Patriots tribute video on TV? Why do we have to cut back right as they were starting the game and not get to see the tribute video? That makes no sense. I wanted to see that. The passing yards mark that Brady broke in like the first quarter, he apparently he was in hurry up offense. An official trotted out during the timeout to go and get to give him the ball, and he just chucked it right back to the equipment boy, took a new ball and got going, which I find funny. But NBC was probably losing their mind that they couldn't do a big elaborate 30-minute ceremony like they did for Drew Brees on ESPN for that game. Which, by the way, I don't know about you guys, I liked that Brady didn't care. I liked that he kept playing. That was nice. But moving on,
very on brand of him too.
Exactly.
I mean, he didn't care the week after they did the whole Breeze thing when he broke it.
Exactly. It's part of why we love him up here, and part of why I was very happy that they booed him for his first offensive drive, and they didn't boo him again, but he deserved one. He deserved one for leaving, and it was to let him know that, hey, guess what? We love you, but you're on the other side now. Let's get going.
I don't think he would have had it any other way. I think he knew that was going to happen, and I think he's probably like, yeah, come on, go ahead, light my fire a little bit, you know.
I actually think in a way he didn't think that was going to happen, that he was going to get booed at all. And the way that Twitter responded to his return to New England, I personally thought led to a lot of fans in the stands that were rooting for Tampa Bay to win, and I'm sure there was a good amount of them that were.
I thought there were going to be more.
I think yeah.
Based on the booing, I don't think there was, because I did not hear anyone cheering on that play.
I meant on Twitter, like leading up to the game, and all the people wearing their stupid little half
I hate those
Patriots
things.
at Bucs jerseys.
Burn them.
But I was impressed with the fan base last night, and I think they played a little bit of a role in Brady being a little off last night. I know the weather was a big part of it, but I think the crowd actually booing him took him by surprise a little bit.
That was the other thing about the broadcast. Chris Collinsworth says, "Oh, it's rainy, and I think that Brady's having a little trouble with throwing the ball here." No, guys. First of all,
Mac Jones was surgical, by the way.
Exactly. I noticed the weather didn't affect Mac Jones. Tom Brady's been playing up in Gillette for 20 years in conditions worse than this, and now he's down in Florida, where monsoons hit regularly down in Tampa Bay with rain and stuff. Are you seriously going to tell me that the weather is the fact that why Brady was missing passes? No, he was juiced up. It was an incredible environment, especially for the guy returning there. That's why he was off. And Belichick's game plan did work to an extent. So the broadcast, what are you doing? All right, up. Yeah. There are many ups to choose from this. I'm going to lead, and we're going to get into a discussion about this one player for a little bit, and you all know where I'm going to go with it. It's the quarterback. It's Mac Jones. I come out of this game, and I said it to you guys. I think I tweeted it a couple of times, but I was very nervous going into this game simply for the fact that I made the argument I didn't think the Patriots improved in one area from week 1 to week 3. Not a single positional group improved. But guess what? What was my feeling coming out of this game? You have a franchise quarterback that I can have confidence in that now. And it is going to take a little bit to unlearn as Kyle so eloquently put it yesterday, it's a little bit of what happened when Cam was throwing last year. When he would throw it, I would go, oh, Jesus, is going to get picked. And I was doing that last week with Mac because so many interceptions from the Saints. But it just felt like whenever there was a throwing, whenever Cam Newton was throwing last year, you were kind of flying by the seat of your pants a little bit. And there is that with Mac Jones this year because he's a rookie. But he showed me something last night. In that environment, when you're the rookie, you're the understudy, you're replacing the guy that you're facing across the field. He outplayed Brady by leaps and bounds, and anyone who tells you otherwise is stupid. He absolutely outplayed Tom Brady last night.
But Brady won, so
no
he
touchdowns.
Was better.
That's insane. Anyone who says that is insane.
Him for that. And I don't even fault him for his interception entirely because he got absolutely clocked. It was a dumb throw. He shouldn't have done it, but and
rookie mistake.
Didn't it also hit off a Pats player before it got intercepted too?
It went straight up in the air.
It was just like one of those really just unlucky plays where if he just thrown it into the dirt or something, it would have been fine. But
precisely why I don't think interceptions are a QB stat. It's more of a
cumulative.
Like you need to find.
It depends. It depends.
Some
of them are definitely a QB stat.
What I think you need to do a secondary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like dropped INT or not dropped INTs because that's another stat that's for when guys drop picks, but when like it goes
muffed
off the
catch.
receiver's hands, muffed interception or something like that. Just a stat for that.
I'm pretty sure
that pick would go in that category.
I'm pretty sure in our back in the old dorm room in Piano Row, we came up with the stat muffed catch as to describe like a play where a wide receiver deflects the ball into another player and it's an interception.
Yeah, you could just call it like a receiver interception or
which can still be on the quarterback if it's like a bad throw or if you let him the wrong way, but there are some where it like literally just like hits off his hands and goes into someone else.
And it's like that's last week.
100%. That was not really it wasn't the best throw by Mac, but it also wasn't.
But if Jonnu didn't knock the thing up in the air, it just would have been an incomplete pass. Like
100%.
Yeah, exactly. So I bring up Mac Jones. I leave the floor to the two of you. Your guys' thoughts, because me and Jacqueline, I would say, have been a little bit more positive on Mac through the first 3 weeks,
Mac
especially.
Rosen.
You two have been a little bit harder on him. What were your thoughts from last night's performance from the rookie signal caller? Kyle, I'm going to lead with you here.
Yeah, so I mean, you heard me after the game. I said that I hadn't seen anything from him yet to make me believe in him, and that last week definitely gave me some. I'm going to scale back myself a little bit. I think I was getting a little cavalier with what I was talking about. I think it was because kind of the heat of the moment, and I was really passionate and really upset about the way the game went. But no, I definitely agree. I mean, that was a massive improvement. We finally got to see him in a situation where he got to take control. Granted, he was pretty much kind of doing the same thing he was doing the whole time. He was just throwing these quick, short passes and getting the completions. I mean, like I was talking about Mac's game this afternoon, and someone was like, "Oh, well, Brady had like it was like a 56% completion or something like that. Max was like 70." I'm like, "Yeah, but like Mac Jones throws like really short passes, so his completion rate is gonna be high. That's just kind of how it is." Yeah. But he showed resilience in the fact that it was a home game, sure, but that was a huge game. That is not an easy game for a rookie quarterback to play in, and he held his own. He didn't make as many mistakes as he made in the past. And he just showed a little bit of fight. Like, and I remember we were talking about like, oh, do they have it? Do you think they're gonna? Words. Sorry, Jeremy. You were saying like, oh, I don't think they're gonna be able to drive down. And I, who was really high on Mac during the game, was like, no, I mean, I've seen 100%. He's totally gonna be able to drive down. I was fully believing that he was gonna be able to drive down, and obviously it ended up getting batted down, so it technically didn't happen. But I finally really felt like I believed in him during that game than I had in all the other previous ones.
In reference to that, this was late in the third quarter. The Bucs had just scored that. No, hang on. The Bucs had just scored that touchdown with Ronald Jones to go up 13-7, and I said the defense is starting to get a little tired because it showed. They were starting to get a little worn down late in the third, maybe in the fourth quarter as well. I was worried, and I texted my dad at the time. I say, if they don't string together a drive that isn't a 3-and-out or 1 first down and then you have to punt, I'm worried the defense is just going to buckle under and this game is going to be over.
The blowout was coming.
But exactly what Kyle said. He responded. He took the team all the way down the field, and at the start of the fourth quarter, in the first play, they line up in that big fat formation. I go, holy crap, they're going to run the ball again. And lo and behold, play action to Jonnu Smith right over the top. Everybody bid on it, including the Buccaneers. Everyone in the stadium thought they were running.
The broadcast.
Yep. Touchdown. Patriots back in the lead. And it was, the apartment went nuts. May have gotten slightly in trouble for it, but it's fine. I will bite the bullet because that was totally worth celebrating that. Jordan, your thoughts on Mac Jones?
Yeah, I've probably been the harshest of the four of us on him, especially in our group chat, which we don't need to go dive into.
Mac Rosen, baby.
Of course not. We do not need to go back.
We don't need to dive into that.
Don't check the receipts.
But I did tweet it at one point last night. I think it was, I don't know if it was before the game had ended or after the game. I said I've teetered on both extremes of Mac Jones because I fell in love with him pretty quickly in preseason. I still thought Cam should have started out of camp, but I loved Mac in preseason. And then I was very quick to jump down his throat about how bad he'd been. I fell in love with Mac Jones last night. That dude was surgical, and every throw, like Kyle said, after the Ronald Jones touchdown, he had all the confidence in the world they'd go down and score again. I was the same way with the minute left in the game when they had to drive down and go get the field goal to win the game. I had all the confidence in the world that it was going to be able to happen. Now, ultimately, Mac didn't get them, a yard or two closer, which is where that kick would have probably been good and not died at the end and hit the upright. But I like I said, I fell in love with Mac Jones last night, and last night's game, regardless of result, long term is going to pay huge dividends for the Patriots, especially with Mac Jones at quarterback.
And just his confidence too. I mean, the fact that he knows now that he was able to hold his own against the guy he's supposed to replace. Like, do you know how much even just like as a confidence like killer it is knowing that like, oh, the fans in the stadium aren't going to be rooting for me. My own fans are going to be rooting for the other guy across the field because I have to live up to him.
And his aura.
And he absolutely balled out. And he absolutely balled out. And as he could. I mean, certainly he could. There were a lot of different things he could have done. And I remember a lot of the things that I brought up as negatives against him are also not all his fault. He's dealing with, as we've said, not a very good offensive line. You need to have a good O-line if you want a rookie quarterback to thrive. He hasn't been able to thrive, but he's been able to do enough with what he has, which is what I like to see.
Last night was the closest that he'll ever get to being in a hostile environment in his own home stadium. And I know
what Zach Wilson faces every week.
But he's in a hostile environment every time he's in the locker room because the O-line hates him.
I was going to say, which is what Justin Herbert is currently dealing with since the Chargers are facing the Raiders, and it's like majority Raiders fans.
That's a good point.
They said they're going with a silent count at a home game.
That's terrible. That's absolutely
the one last thing I wanted to bring up about Mac Jones that I was very impressed with was not necessarily, the fact he was 31 of 40, he had 275 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was the fact that in those 31 passes, he hit 9 different receivers. That was very Brady-esque, and I'm not saying, oh, Mac Jones is going to be Brady, but the spread offense is what worked for the Patriots. You don't give one guy 10, it was Edelman normally, but you don't give one guy, 17, 18 targets. You have 40 passes, and you targeted 9 different people.
And the other thing is the spread offense is what worked in Alabama. Yep. Like that's where Mac Jones thrived, when he had a lot of good weapons around him, where if he could get them the ball, they could make a play. And that's why I was excited. First, I was obviously disappointed because I thought they were going to get Justin Fields. And Justin Fields, speaking of which, looked pretty good last week. Granted, it was against the Lions. But he had that one throw he had to Robinson was incredible.
Mooney.
Besides that point, I thought he also had one to Robinson that was pretty
It's
good
possible.
too.
I saw the one over the shoulder to Mooney on the sideline, but it's fine. Keep going.
It was pretty sweet. But the reason why I was okay with him getting Mac is I was like, all right, well they just signed all. They have it. No, they had.
Yes, no,
had
they
free
had.
agency happen.
Free agency happens before the draft. Yeah.
Yeah, so free agency had already happened, so I knew they had all these weapons, and then they went out and got a guy who thrives with good weapons around him. So I'm like, oh, so he's going to be fine because he has people he can get the ball to. He's not going to have to deal with having bad weapons. I mean, when you think about it, most of the rookie quarterbacks this year actually have pretty solid weapons around them. Yeah. So, it took them a little bit to get through the growing pains, but I would honestly say overall, last week was a great week for the rookie quarterbacks.
Yeah.
All right,
Even Trey Lance.
I'm going to throw out another guy here, and I want us to just touch on him briefly before we get to your guys' up, so we may have to go a little bit quicker through the rest of them. But I think another big one that we have to talk about, because we've been crapping on him for the first 3 weeks of the season, and rightfully so, is Josh McDaniels. The second half, kudos, A+, absolutely deserves all the credit. As good as Bill Belichick's game plan was against Tom Brady, Josh McDaniels' play calling to eliminate the run completely was equally as good, in my opinion, from an offensive standpoint. Because I'm watching this, and I even bought a couple of the play-action fakes. I said, okay, they've strung together maybe 3 or 4 passes in a row here. There's no way they're going to abandon the run on this play, 2nd and 1, or whatever the down and distance may have been. They have to keep going back to it, because that's who Josh McDaniels has been the last 2 years, even 3, 4 years maybe, in the year where Sony Michel was a rookie and they just ran him all the way to a Super Bowl. They're going to go back to the run, and they didn't. They didn't do it. They let Mac thrive. They let him ball out. They dialed up a couple of trick plays. I will get to that. That's my one concern with the offense, is that on a couple of those drives, what did they need to get down to where they were trick plays with Jacoby Myers throwing the ball? And I don't know if that's sustainable. But if Mac Jones...
I mean, I would say arguably it is, because it's like the 4th week they've done it. They've pretty much had a double pass in every game this season.
That's a good point. I don't know. Yeah, I feel
Jacoby
like
Myers is 4 for 4, 88 yards and 2 touchdowns in his career. Let the kid sling it.
he looked pretty good too. That throw down to Aguilar on the right sideline, he led him perfectly over a defender.
God, Al Michaels almost passed away on that call.
Dude,
I
love
excited
Jacoby
when
Myers,
that ball
man.
hit.
Yeah,
Jacoby Myers is such a good player.
So I think the one thing that I'm still concerned about with this offense, because I think Mac Jones showed us all something on Sunday night, is probably their red zone offense. And the one bad throw that Mac Jones had was, do you guys remember down in the red zone late in the game? Yeah, he throws it across his body right into Devin White's gut. And my heart falls right through the floor down to the first floor apartment unit below me. And Devin White just kerchunks it, like right off his stone hands. And
a gift.
Seriously, it absolutely was a gift. And then they threw a tight end screen on the 3rd down that had no chance of working whatsoever. So
that was bad.
The screen plays have still, they got to work on that. I'm amazed they aren't throwing more wide receiver screens. Just huck it out to the edges.
Kendrick Bourne, he could easily do that.
Bourne's been really good, really shifty so far this season.
Exactly.
He's been very impressive.
But I think the red zone offense is what I still want to see them working on and getting better at. Overall, moving the ball between the 20s, which is usually the problem for this Patriots offense, and it was on the first 3 drives of the game, they looked better. They looked a lot better last night, and that's why I come out of this and I'm not absolutely crushed. I'm still very upset that they lost, but this is about as close to a moral victory as you can get in the NFL, in a league where there are usually no moral victories. This is about as close as you're ever going to get.
Yeah, I'd consider this more of a... I mean, I guess you could still call it a moral victory in definition, but I'd call it more of a big-picture victory. Yeah. We know that the Patriots aren't going to win the Super Bowl this year. Whether they had... maybe if they had Brady, they'd be a Super Bowl contender, because obviously Brady's still...
But the weapons wouldn't be there because he would have demanded a higher salary.
Yeah, weapons. Exactly. But you look at this team and you're like, okay, so you don't know 100% because it could have just been a flash in the pan week, but you're pretty confident that Mac Jones is the guy. The weapons around him, they look pretty good, I think. I think Aguilar responded pretty well, even though he only had 3 catches. Jacoby Myers has been very dependable. The tight ends,
any of those guys on your ups
last night? In fact,
I had
4
Bourne.
of them were.
I had Bourne as one of my ups.
I had Bourne as one of mine as well. Okay. He had a couple of really great plays where he broke out and just made plays happen.
Agreed.
I had Bourne and I had Myers and Aguilar in tandem as one of them because I like them both together because they combined for 11 catches for 125 yards on 17 targets, and then obviously 2 for 2 for 45 yards in passing.
Yeah, of course.
But this team looks good. But yes, but this team looks pretty good. Offensively, there's a lot of reasons to be excited. It's just getting that offensive line right, and then honestly, I mean, Damien Harris, I don't know if I can necessarily blame him so much for the struggles of the last couple of weeks in the running game, but maybe we shouldn't have been so high on him.
I think we were right. I think we're right to say that right now. Let's see how it develops,
It's
especially
close.
against Houston.
It's close. Right now, I'd probably give 50%, 60% blame on the offensive line because he's not being able to get downhill at all.
Yeah, I was going to say it seems like a second-year Sony Michel issue where
That's possible.
he's just not able to run the ball as effectively just because he doesn't have the line to help him.
And Jakob Johnson's not much reinforcement.
No, he's not Devlin. Who was
at
there
fullback.
yesterday?
I would be curious to see.
I love that.
Similarly
Know that.
to, I don't remember what team it was. I think it might have been the Colts. Put a guard, McGovern, I think it was, at fullback. I wonder if they'd be willing
Connor
to when
McGovern?
Trent Brown.
Because I believe he was on either Dallas and the Jets.
Oh, it was one of those.
It's fine. Keep going.
I don't remember.
It was a
I
team.
don't remember. It was a team, not the football team, but it was a team.
I have an idea for you.
I wonder if they'd
I
put
also have
when
one.
Trent Brown comes back.
I think
if
it's the
they would
same
be
one,
willing to
Kyle.
put, if they'd be willing to put Ted
Maybe.
Karras at fullback on, especially in obvious running situations.
Ready? Ramondre Stevenson at fullback. I'm okay
No,
with that.
that was not my
can
idea,
switch him.
and I don't
You can
like
switch
that.
him if you need to.
The
Ramondre
one play he
Stevenson's a
tried to
big
block
boy.
on, he got planted like a sunflower.
He was blitz.
I'd be okay with
it was
it.
blitz pickup. In if you're a fullback, you're attacking the guy that you're going to block. You're not coming
true,
backwards.
that's true. My idea was similar to that, and I was saying that there will probably be a fullback available in the draft who is from Oklahoma, Jeremiah Hall, who currently is leading the Sooners in touchdowns, which is hilarious because he's their fullback. He rushed and caught a touchdown in their last game, but no, I mean he's an offensive threat and he's a pretty solid leader and blocker. So I mean I would like to see maybe the Pats spend like a 6th-round pick on him. I mean drafting a fullback is probably the most Belichick thing ever.
Okay, so I did monopolize a lot of the uptime, and I apologize. We just had some big topics that we had to get out of the way. Kyle, do you have something before we move on to other ups?
No, I wanted to really get an up in.
Okay,
because
so
I
we'll
wanted to highlight
go
one player.
2 each. Pick your 2. Kyle, you can start.
So my first up is Jalen Mills. I think he's actually been pretty underrated over these last couple games, and outside of like you said, the 2 plays that they were playing prevent defense, he pretty much had Chris Godwin on lock. Chris Godwin
Did Chris
was
Godwin
barely
catch
involved
another
in that
ball
game.
outside of that?
He had 3 catches for 55 yards, and I'm pretty
Okay.
sure like 40 of those yards were all on that drive at the end of the half.
Yeah.
So Jalen Mills actually had an absolutely fantastic game, and I think he's been pretty underrated over the last couple weeks. And I mean the secondary in general was fantastic. J.C. Jackson did a pretty good job guarding Mike Evans. The only times they really, and I think a lot of it was when they were in man coverage. I think the only times when like Evans would break off for a big run was whenever they were in zone and like he just had space to move and they got the ball to him. Jonathan Jones, even when he was injured, came in and did enough. I mean, I'd probably count more of those on Brady making bad throws to AB, but Jonathan Jones did enough coming in when he was injured.
I actually had the third corner as a down. I thought that whoever Antonio Brown was getting covered by usually got torched throughout most of the game. And
That was true.
that last pass late in the 4th should have been caught for a touchdown. I don't know how he didn't catch it.
No, it should have been, but I still give him credit for coming back in with that injury and at least like doing enough. Just being just like chaos.
Agreed.
Should I do my second one or should I just
Let's kick it to
save
Jordan first here. Jordan, do you have an up that you'd like to talk about here? Because I think there's one obvious one sitting out there. I don't know if you're going to take it though.
I'm not going to take the obvious one because I want to mention the one I said you were going to hate earlier.
That's fine.
Brandon
We talked
Bolden,
about
I
it.
thought was awesome last night.
No, he's
was
honestly
good.
been the best running back on the team.
He can't run the ball to save his life.
No, he cannot.
I think we know that. But I mean, he had 8 catches for 51 yards yesterday, and he almost had a
doesn't
touchdown.
fumble.
Yeah, and that's exactly
Don't
the
jinx
next
it.
point I had
Knock
on
on
that.
wood.
I said so for the Patriots, if they want to go and trade and get somebody on offense, it should either be a lineman or another receiver. So I think they shouldn't look externally to try and get another pass catching back if they don't have faith in Taylor. So I think I'm okay with Brandon Bolden being that guy very sparsely because he only has 1 fumble and 312 career touches and has 0 and 301 career touches with the Patriots. He doesn't put the ball on the ground,
I think
and that's
he fumbled
huge.
against the Patriots, if I'm not
He did.
mistaken.
He did, and he also ran for 2 touchdowns in that game
Yes,
with
I
the
remember that game
Dolphins.
sucked. That was Miami
Yeah.
Miracle game.
It was.
We don't talk about
Of
that.
course it was. Of course
But
it was.
he doesn't put the ball on the ground. He's only had 3 seasons where he had more catches than what he had last night.
Yeah.
But I think he'll be okay. I'm more than okay with him being the pass catching.
I'm a little
back.
bit worried about the tread on him. I mean, he's definitely a veteran player, and I'm worried that he may not be used to such a high workload because he played a lot down the stretch, especially after Taylor fumbled. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Kyle, hitting it back to you for an... Oh, sorry. Yeah, you go.
I was just going to say,
go.
and they also, like, if they want to give Ramondre Stevenson a shot again, like, he also can be a pass catching back. He is a pretty solid catcher out of the backfield.
All right, go to...
That's a good way to manage Bolden's workload a little bit too. If you're worried about
they just have to
fading.
actually use him. They have to dress him for the friggin' game.
Yeah, for sure.
Kyle, you're next up.
My next up, as the train rolls by, my next up was Hunter Henry. Hunter Henry had a really big impact in this game. He looked absolutely fantastic. I mean, both the tight ends in general, but I wanted to leave the other one for someone else. We can talk about him in extent. I remember after he had that big catch and then the touchdown, I went to you, Jeremy. I was like, "You apologize to him. You apologize to him."
And it was
because
fair. It was warranted.
I was vocal on this podcast about how you gave up on Hunter Henry way too quickly, and I think last night he definitely showed that he still has it in his bag.
My biggest thing was not the touchdown. My biggest thing was that he was active between the 20s. He was making those little 6-yard outs, catching the ball, falling forward, and getting Mac Jones into third and manageable, which I thought was the key in this game.
The 2 touchdowns are both by the tight ends.
Yep.
Yeah, tight ends came to play last night.
I know John only had 3 for like 14, but he had a touchdown, and obviously the touchdown was a 1-yard gain.
There was that
an
sick
important touchdown.
screenplay that they had over on the left side. I think it was on one of their touchdown drives.
It was on the drive, I think, that John ended up getting a touchdown.
Yeah,
on.
so they clear Brandon Bolden out to the left side, and he takes the covering linebacker with him. And Jonnu Smith essentially does a little loop around the quarterback and then comes out to that left side again, which is now vacated. Mac Jones hits him, and then he runs for about 12 yards. Great play design, and I really hope that they dust that one off again in the coming weeks. Jordan, you're next up.
I think this is going to be the obvious one.
Okay.
Matt Judon was the best player on the field for both teams last night.
Agreed.
I thought. My notes on him. He had a sack. He had 2 tackles for a loss. He had 2 quarterback hits and easily drew about 13 holds that weren't called.
Yeah,
they had to. Hang on,
we're
going to get to that
at least
after.
5 or 6.
They had to mug him to stop him. That was the only way they could stop him, is if they were mugging him.
I would like to say, in terms of the Judon performance, outstanding. I like that he was trash-talking Tom Brady all the way. I'm going to use this moment to bring up officiating, and we're only going to spend a couple of minutes on it. I just wanted to touch on it. I love Bill Vinovich, and I told Kyle that heading into the game, but his crew had an awful night last night on both sides. Both sides were bad. That pass interference call against Hunter Henry on that final drive, how was that PI? If that was my DB going for the ball and getting called for PI on that, I would have been pissed. You had Matt Judon and Josh Uche getting held on basically every other play by both of the Buccaneers tackles. A phantom hands to the face penalty against Lawrence Guy that
was awful.
And
one of the holds against Onwenu that got him benched ended up being a complete phantom hold as well.
Exactly, and I am still very confused as to how Jacoby Myers didn't fumble the ball in the second drive. That was a fumble. He got the ball, turned, and then fumbled the ball. I don't understand how that got called incomplete. I know Kyle was lobbying for an incomplete pass, like in real time.
Wishful thinking.
They went to commercial, and I said, "There's no way that they call this an incomplete pass," and they did. I'm like, "That's a gift." The Slater running out of bounds call, I was actually okay with. I think that was the right call. It was one of the few that they got right. It's just not. It's not one that you see often, which is what was probably frustrating about that.
It's one of those where if they called it or didn't call it, you're like, I get it.
Yeah. Well, for me, my problem with it is the fact that it wasn't that they called it. It was that he got pushed back out a second time. Like, he was clearly trying to get back out there, and then they pushed him back out a second time. I feel like at that point it's like, okay, so like they're just not they're blocking him. They're not letting him get back on the field.
Overall,
that's also only the 3rd penalty Matthew Slater's ever taken in his career.
That makes a lot of sense.
And what just like an uncharacteristic time for it to happen. Like in a big game when you really need a play and you get a play and it's called back for a penalty on Matthew Slater of all people. Like I saw that, I believe I said, I was like, that's just unfair. Like he shouldn't get a penalty in this game. That's stupid.
For sure. I want to touch on this. We're going to record 10 questions in a separate segment. I'm going to put this up as a separate podcast for it because I do want to spend the rest of the time that we have talking about the Patriots game because this is the big topic, and it is coaching. because there were a couple of questionable calls from Belichick that made you wonder what he was thinking, and I want to hear your guys' opinion on it, and I know it's going to take a little bit. So we're going to record the 10 questions after this. So, the first one, end of the first half, 4th and 2, I believe it was, heading into the 2-minute warning. You had thrown it to Brandon Bolden on a pass play the previous play. It was 3rd and 15. He got 13. 4th and 2 from just, I believe it was around the 40 of Tampa Bay, so Brady would have gotten the ball back at midfield had you not gotten it. They take a delay of game penalty and punt it away with Jake Bailey. Did you guys like the call at the time? And even in hindsight, do you like the call to punt it away in that situation? Jordan, you can start on this one.
At the time, I hated it, and I still do hate it. I get why they punted, pin them deep inside inside their own territory, but at the same time,
It worked.
They scored a field goal, but
no, they did get points out of it.
Oh, yeah, fair.
But I felt like the risk of you get to control the rest of the half outweighed the reward of getting to control the rest of the half outweighed the risk of not getting 2 yards. I know the offense hadn't been cooking yet at that point, but I still thought you should have been a little bit more aggressive in that spot.
Kyle, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I really wanted them to go for that, and I feel like they should have. And even in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, no, they definitely should have gone for it.
I think this was the bigger sin out of the 2 calls that we're going to discuss here, because I think
agree.
the Bucs.
I agree.
The Bucs should have been. Let's say I understand. So I think Bill's logic was this: the Bucs were going to get the ball coming out of the half, and you didn't want to give Brady the ball at midfield, have him score, and then score again. The classic double up that the Patriots have been doing for years, and now CBS talks about it basically every freaking broadcast that they're on, that the Patriots are on, and then they never do it, and it's very annoying. They got to stop talking about it. Maybe the Patriots could actually do it for once. That being said, facing the Bucs now is like when you face the Chiefs normally, in the sense that you have to go for things if you want to win the game. And this was the one to go for it because you had just picked up the 3rd and 15. The place is rocking. The 2-minute warning's going. And you brought out your offense and then switched them out for the punt team. And I'm going, what are you doing? I would have loved to have gone for it in that situation. All right, that being said, there was another play that we are going to talk about. And it was the one to end the game. And we were talking about it at the time, me and Kyle, Jacqueline, and then our friends Sean and Pat, who may appear on this podcast in future episodes. We don't know. Depends on how content kind of rolls out. But it was the ending play. 4th and 3, I believe it was at the 38 of the Buccaneers.
It was a 56-yard field goal.
Exactly.
39, so
Because
yeah.
you add it 17 to 18 yards, and then you get the field goal. It turned into a 56-yard field goal for Nick Folk that ties his career long. Do you know where he hit his career long? Denver in the altitude. So you could basically add 5 yards to any Denver kick. So essentially you are really pushing the outer limits of Nick Folk, who is coming off of an injury, and he doinked it off the left upright. If that was going from 54 or 55, I think it probably goes in because it had so much late curve.
The wind smoked it.
It might have doinked in.
I want you guys to walk me through your thought process about this play in the moment, and then after the game, maybe being able to sleep on a little bit. Kyle, I'm going to let you start on this one.
I mean, in the moment, I was pissed that they were kicking. I thought that, the offense had been rolling. I was sure they could. I mean, I knew that they were going to end the game on a field goal. I knew they were going to kick. I just thought that they could have probably gotten more yards and then kicked a shorter field goal. I thought at least going for it on 4th down, because if you missed that, it's like, all right, well, whatever. It was going to be a hard field goal anyway. There was no guarantee you were going to make it. You might as well try to set yourself up. Obviously, I mean, doinking was probably I would have rather had him shank it at that point. Doinking is just so much crueler. But after sleeping on it in hindsight, I was honestly kind of okay with the move. I think that, considering the last pass that Mack had just made, it got bad down at the line. He might be a little shook, might not have been ready to go on 4th down. Nick Folk has been a fantastic kicker. I agree that, it was probably aggressive with how long of a field goal it was and the conditions it was, but it ended up being a pretty solid kick for what it was. It was gonna go in if it didn't just get absolutely fucked by the. Sorry, I ruined it.
That's fine. Don't worry.
Absolutely murked by the wind and the weather at the end.
Hey,
so close to finishing.
Don't worry.
That's
Hey,
on me.
we were
No, it's
already
okay.
fired up by the play.
Kyle, it's okay, because earlier in the show when we were talking about the fan response to Brady, I started to stick my middle finger up, And so
Okay,
that
Eli,
definitely
calm
will
down
be
over there.
That will definitely be in the show as well.
Oh well.
Jordan. Oh, yep. You done, Kyle, or you?
But
want...
I was just gonna say, like, it's just a bummer, and you guys got a couple people got mad at me because I was like, that's honestly the worst way it could have ended. Like, oh well, they could have got it. Brady driven down score. It was like,
I
whatever,
said that.
That's what Brady does. If Brady does that, I'm just like, oh well, that's Tom. But the fact that it was gonna go in, it had the distance, but it just didn't, and it was an aggressive call, so I didn't like it at first, and then it had the distance. Like if it just didn't have the distance because of the rain and whatnot, I would have been like, yeah, there you go, that's what you get. Like, but the fact that it would have gone in is what killed it so much.
Jordan, your thought process on this?
At the time, I was pretty disgusted with the call. I even sent in the group.
You
group
tweeted
chat,
about it. I saw your tweet.
I did. But I also sent to the group chat. I said loser effing mentality. Because I thought it was almost like they were content with just. I mean, obviously Bill's not a gambling man. To our knowledge, it was like he was content with covering the spread, but which I was content with because I had a double or nothing bet going with one of my friends that nobody here knows. But anyway, ended up winning that. But anyway, I thought 50 seconds left. Best case scenario, obviously, nail the field goal, and you give Brady 50 seconds with 2 timeouts to go the length of the field, basically, because they would have probably kicked it through the end zone for a touchback. You couldn't stop any. I think at that point the Bucs were really starting to kind of feel it offensively. So I thought it was basically a guaranteed loss if you make the kick. If you made the kick, I thought you go for it and you end up losing whether you get the first down or you miss the kick. So you might as well take the risk. I looked at the numbers after, and actually. Numbers, because people say, oh, the analytics would have said to go for there. Actually, the analytics agreed with the decision to kick it there. The win probability was 44% if he kicks it, 34% if they go for it. And that's not what influenced me to change my mind. I slept on it. I woke up and I said, you know what? It happens. I'm okay with I'm okay with the decision now. Still think it was more damning to not go for it in the second quarter.
You know what I think it was? I think it's another instance of Bill Belichick trying to protect his rookie quarterback. I think that he would have rather had Nick Folk be the quote-unquote GOAT of this game than Mac Jones. That being said, in the moment, I was a little bit confused as to why they didn't go for it. I think I was a little bit more okay with it, maybe sooner than the rest of Twitter for sure. Maybe you guys, I'm not so sure. I was okay with the attempt. He just missed it. And you know what, that happens. He gave it a heck of a boot. I thought for sure it was going in. It looked really good and had basically the 5 of us that were watching in my apartment all get closer to the TV until we just dropped our heads as that thing clanged and you knew that it wasn't going in.
And it was the loudest doink I've ever heard.
It really was.
Legit yelled. I'm like, oh, he got it. Because off of his leg, it looked right down the gut. And I forgot about the wind and how it was going to be ripping that ball to smithereens.
Yeah. But I think...
Should have made Gillette a dome.
I think what's interesting is you would rather... I think that the Folk bet was not a bad one, but I also think it was a little bit of... He doesn't want Mac Jones to come out of this game where he has built this much confidence, where he has played so well, and have him unbuckle his chin strap, take his helmet off, and walk off to the sideline head down because he missed a play or he got intercepted on 4th down. I think in Bill's mind that the field goal was the best solution because he didn't know whether or not Mac Jones could get those extra 3 yards. I will say on that final drive, 1st and 10 from, I believe, the 45, excuse me, he has Jacoby Myers on the left sideline, puts a beautiful ball over whoever the cornerback was, right over the shoulder, and Jacoby Myers drops the ball. 2nd down, he got the 7 yards that they ended up getting to 3rd and 3, and then David bats the ball down on 3rd and 3 to bring up 4th and 3. But if he had completed that ball to Myers on the sideline, he was probably getting into field goal range from there because it would have been another 1st down if you go back and watch the replay of the game. I agree with Jordan. I think that not going for it in the first half was a far more damning mistake than it was to not go for the field goal, to go for it on 4th down at the end of the game. But those 2 decisions combined with the fumble from J.J. Taylor, probably if you want to boil it down to a couple of plays, those 3, and then I guess the Slater penalty, because it was a fumble that the Patriots recovered. But I did want to touch on that Slater point here because This is a concerning trend that I've seen with the Patriots over the first 4 weeks, and one that shows no signs of slowing down. And it's unrelated to the fact that Mac Jones is your starting quarterback, because he's actually played pretty good. Quarterback has not been the biggest issue on this team. And it's unrelated to the fact that Tom Brady left, because a lot of people like to point to that and say that's why Bill is so bad without Tom Brady. It's because he's gone and Tom was the reason for all the winning. No. What's the biggest problem for the Patriots, I would argue, is sloppiness. I mean, burning that second time out because Chase Winovich doesn't know whether to get on the field after an incomplete pass.
Another reason why Kyle Van Noy was down, because he was the reason they had to do that. It wasn't Winovich's fault.
There we go.
Winovich was the 11th man, and Kyle Van Noy waved them off.
Yep. Ball security problems, whether it be Ramondre Stevenson, J.J. Taylor, Damian Harris, all putting the ball on the ground. Jacoby Myers with a fumble. This game should have been a fumble. Kendrick Bourne fumbled against the Jets. You had picks aplenty from Mac Jones, one because of Jonnu Smith. Whether it be sloppiness in pre-snap penalties, you had another 12 men in defensive formation in the huddle yesterday for some godforsaken reason. David Andrews can't figure out
that was ASU.
David Andrews can't figure out a snap count anymore. You had one of those false start everyone but the center on the last drive. Isaiah Wynn clearly moved on that last drive too, and it didn't get called. I
saw that man's soul exit his body on that.
Yeah, you really did. There's no excuse. You can't blame the fact that you have a rookie quarterback for these mistakes. These are mental errors that you're just not used to seeing from Belichick teams. Do you guys think it's going to get better? Because if it doesn't, I think that they're destined for one of these 7-10, 6-11 seasons, because they're not making winning plays right now. And that was the hallmark of the Brady Patriots. It's that they made winning plays when it mattered.
I think part of the problem has a little bit to do with a lot of the stars that were around when Brady was here are also getting older. Like we said with Slater, this is his third penalty he's ever taken, but he's also up there in age. Hightower, like I said during the three downs, he looks slow, he looks weak. McCourty still looks, top of the line. He's been fantastic in my
Although I didn't
see
see him yesterday. I didn't hear his name called at all.
I didn't either, but that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, if you're in the secondary, it's not a bad thing.
But a lot of the stars are starting to get up there. Like I'm not talking about the guys on the offensive line. Those guys are still relatively young, although David Andrews might be getting up there in terms of being a center, taking all that.
Lawrence Guy, I mean, he's looked like a shell of himself since they re-signed him, and I was a big proponent of bringing him back.
Yeah.
I'm just a little bit worried about this sloppiness, because this seems unrelated to the fact that you lost the greatest quarterback of all time.
I will say, though, in fairness to them, this sloppiness, we started to get used to it existing in the first 4 weeks of the season. So I will say I'll give it 2 more weeks, maybe 3 more weeks, depending on if it's starting to trend in the right direction, before I start getting genuinely worried. But if the vets are still taking 3-4 weeks to really shake off the rust in terms of being sloppy, then so be it. And it's a good year to do it, because again, you have a rookie quarterback, and you're a fumble and a missed kick away from being 3-1 right now. You'd be the same record. You'd be a game better than the Bucs this year if you won yesterday. But
all right,
better than Chiefs.
Better than the Chiefs, exactly.
Kyle, I'm going to let you lead on this one. Final takeaways. If you had to boil down your experience watching this game to maybe a couple of sentences, what is your main takeaway from the Patriots losing to the Buccaneers?
I have hope. It's very similar to the way I felt after the game against the Seahawks last year, but last year, obviously, we realized that was false hope. And the reason why I think that could be false hope is this Buccaneers defense is very battered, and it was rainy conditions. So it's one of those things where it's like, who knows if they're fully healthy, Mac Jones maybe gets intercepted 3 times and they lose by a lot more. Who knows?
Jordan.
But I'm going to try to stay as optimistic as possible, and I think that they really showed some good building blocks in that game.
Jordan.
I think ultimately what we need to realize as fans is we can be disappointed in the fact that they lost. But we all know they're not a Super Bowl team this year. So losing games this year isn't necessarily a bad thing in terms of, especially for one of the oldest rosters in football. You get top of the line talent in every single round, or not top of the line, but you get first grabs at players in the top of each round. If you go 6-11 this year, all I care about at the end of the day this season is does Mac Jones look legit? Does he look like somebody you're comfortable handing the keys to the organization to? And the guys that they signed, how are they performing, and is that sustainable moving forward? I'm okay with them not making the playoffs, I mean, I don't want to wave the white flag and say I surrender 1-3 with a 17-game schedule. Anything can happen. I think when you get a little absurd with it, but the fact of the matter is, I'm more worried about how Mac does this year and how I feel about him moving forward than I do about however they do this year.
All right, and my takeaway, crushing loss. I feel more confident about the team than I did going into this game. They have to clean up the penalties and the turnovers if they're going to hope to go anywhere. Because regardless of how well Mac Jones played, you can play well, but you won't make winning plays, and he didn't make any winning plays yesterday. And that's part of the reason that they lost. You should have turned some of those field goal drives into touchdown drives, and then it would have been a different story. So, thank you to Kyle and Jordan for joining me. Finally, in a word, Rams-Seahawks, Thursday Night Football in Seattle. Who are you guys taking? Jordan, what team?
Rams.
Kyle.
Rams.
And I will be taking the Rams as well. We will get Jacqueline's pick. We will put it on the graphic. We will be back for our little 10 questions mini pod coming up maybe in the next couple of days. And then we will follow that up with our Week 5 picks episode later on in the week. So for Kyle and Jordan, I'm Jeremy saying have a good rest of your day, everybody.